I'm Réal Hamilton-Romeo of Réal Hamilton-Romeo Public Relations, and this is Real Talk. This past week, I've been reviewing a number of Ta-Nehisi Coates media interviews for the release of his new book, The Message. One particular interview, CBS Mornings, caught my attention. In the interview, co-anchor Tony DeCopel asked Coates poignant questions about the last chapter of his book, which details the Palestinian experience during the Hamas-Israel conflict. As a publicist and a media trainer, I was so pleased watching this interview. Let me explain. Essentially, in this interview, Coates was a shining example of what happens when a client integrates learnings from media training into real life. It was super clear to me that Coates believed his message, he was listening to understand, and he also showed great control and command of the interview.
Here are examples of each technique in action.
I found myself wondering, why does Ta-Nehisi Coates leave out so much? And is it because you just don't believe that Israel in any condition has a right to exist?
Take note of Ta-Nehisi's listening cues. Take note of the way in which he pauses before responding. And take note of his overall composure.
Well, I would say the perspective that you just outlined, there is no shortage of that perspective in American media.
This is a good example of blocking.
I am most concerned always with those who don't have a voice, with those who don't have the ability to talk.
This is a good example of flagging.
I have asked repeatedly in my interviews whether there is a single network, mainstream organization in America with a Palestinian American bureau chief or correspondent who actually has a voice to articulate their part of the world. I've been a reporter for 20 years. The reporters of those who believe more sympathetically about Israel and its right to exist don't have a problem getting their voice out. But what I saw in Palestine, what I saw on the West Bank, what I saw in Haifa in Israel, what I saw in the South Hebron Hills, those were the stories that I have not heard. And those were the stories that I was most occupied with. I wrote a 260-page book. It is not a treatise on the entirety of the conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis.
This is a good example of bridging.
But if you were to read this book, you would be left wondering, why does any of Israel exist? What a horrific place, committing horrific acts on a daily basis. So I think the question is central and key. If Israel has a right to exist, and if your answer is no, then I guess the question becomes, why do the Palestinians have a right to exist? Why do 20 different Muslim countries have a right to exist?
My answer is that no country in this world establishes its ability to exist through rights. Countries establish their ability to exist through force, as America did. And so I think this question of right to Israel does exist. It's a fact. The question of its right is not a question that I would be faced with any other country.
This is a good example of blocking.
There's nothing that offends me about a Jewish state. I am offended by the idea of states built on ethnocracy, no matter where they are.
Muslim included.
I would not want a state where any group of people lay down their citizenship rights based on ethnicity.
This is a good example of headlining.
The country of Israel is a state in which half the population exists on one tier of citizenship, and everybody else that's ruled by Israelis exists on another tier, including Palestinian Israeli citizens. The only people that exist on that first tier are Israeli Jews. Why do we support that? Why is that okay? I'm the child of Jim Crow. I'm the child of people that were born into a country where that was exactly the case, of American apartheid. I walk over there and I walk through the occupied territories and I walk down the street in Hebron. And a guy says to me, I can't walk down the street unless I profess my religion.
This is a good example of hooking.
Why is there no agency in this book for the Palestinians? They exist in your narrative merely as victims of the Israelis, as though they were not offered peace at any juncture, as though they don't have a stake in this as well. What is their role in the lack of a Palestinian?
I have a very, 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 very moral compass about this. And again, perhaps it's because of my ancestry. Either apartheid is right or it's wrong. It's really, really simple. Either what I saw was right or it's wrong. I am against a state that discriminates against people on the basis of ethnicity. I'm against that. There is nothing the Palestinians could do that would make that okay for me. My book is not based on the hyper-morality of the Palestinian people.
This is a good example of flagging.
Kudos to Ta-Nehisi Coates. Honestly, if he were my client, I would have been hugging and kissing him after the interview for how well he handled that exchange. Coates maintained his focus on the purpose of the book. He remained aligned with his talking points, even when it seemed as though DeCopel was using his line of questioning to rattle Coates or bait Coates into saying something that he didn't explicitly express. all things that can happen during a media interview. I love that Coates didn't take the bait. There was even a point when Gayle King interjected to bring the conversation back to a less pointed direction. And Coates said, no, this is important. Then Coates steered the conversation where he wanted it to go. When clients are doing media interviews and they go well, these are the moments that PR executives like me live for. These moments demonstrate that preparation works and good interviews are possible. He used all of his transitions, his blocking methods, his signposts, etc. Now, let's just be very clear. A good interview does not mean that we all have to agree or be nice or kiss each other's ass. You can be poignant. You can be someone who sticks to your guns. You can even disagree and still be a good interview subject. Disagreement makes for healthy discourse. And as long as there's mutual respect and your point for being interviewed is achieved, you've done well. So folks, if you would like to discuss media training, prepare talking points, whether for internal audiences like your employees or external audiences like the media and other stakeholders, or if you'd like to book media interviews, feel free to drop me a message. My email address is at the bottom of your screen. Thank you. For more PR commentary, be sure to follow Réal the Publicist on Instagram. Like these videos, drop a comment below, and share them with friends.